I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Your brain is running an ancient survival program right now, and it will quietly erase every trace of it before you open your eyes. You'll discover why evolution designed forgetting, and understand why the dreams you can't remember may be the most important ones you ever had. Welcome to Psychology for Sleep. Wherever you are right now, perhaps lying in the soft dark, feeling the weight of the day beginning to lift, allow yourself to simply be here. We'll journey through 100 psychology facts about why we forget our dreams. From the ancient survival simulations your sleeping brain runs every night, to the invisible skills they leave behind, to the strange gift hidden inside every forgotten dream. This thoughtful journey through the dreaming mind builds bridges between searching minds. A gentle subscribe, like, or sharing your thoughts creates a pathway for more sleepless souls to discover this peaceful space, and brings us closer to protecting it, one sleepy soul at a time. Your presence here means everything to us. Let yourself settle completely now. Feel your jaw unclench. Your breath find its own slow rhythm. There's nothing to hold on to here. Just notice that quiet heaviness beginning to gather at the edges of your body, like consciousness slowly lowering its brightness. Thoughts softening into the peace of approaching sleep. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're resting where forgotten dreams have shaped every skill you carry. Let your mind dissolve into that quiet design. And now we begin. Every night, your brain runs a program that is hundreds of millions of years old. While you lie still, while your breathing slows and your muscles release their hold on the day, something ancient and purposeful begins. Your sleeping brain enters a state of vivid, emotionally charged simulation, creating worlds, rehearsing dangers, practicing responses to threats you have never actually faced. And then, before you wake, it erases nearly everything, not carelessly, not accidentally, with what appears to be a very specific, very deliberate kind of design. Tonight, we begin with a question that has puzzled scientists, philosophers, and dreamers for centuries. If your brain goes to all that trouble to create these experiences, why does it work so hard to make sure you won't remember them? Your ancestors slept in extraordinary danger. For hundreds of thousands of years, the humans who came before you closed their eyes in environments where predators moved in the dark, where rival groups might approach in the night, where a wrong decision in a moment of crisis could end everything. And yet they dreamed every night. In the middle of that danger, their brains entered this same ancient state of vivid simulation. This tells us something important. Dreaming is not a luxury. It is not a pleasant side effect of a resting brain. Something about it was valuable enough that evolution kept it, protected it, and passed it forward across every generation of every creature that eventually became you. Here is the paradox that puzzled researchers for decades. Many scientists believe dreams serve crucial biological functions, helping us rehearse responses to challenges, practice social interactions, and process emotional experiences. These simulations can be incredibly vivid and intense. And yet most of us cannot remember a single dream unless we happen to wake up in the middle of one. If dreams are so important to survival, why would the brain design a system that erases them? In 2024, a team of researchers at Radboud University Medical Center in the Netherlands proposed an elegant answer to this question, one that reframes everything we thought we understood about why dreams disappear. The key to understanding dream forgetting lies in a distinction that most of us never think about. Your brain does not have one kind of memory. It has several, and they work in fundamentally different ways. Explicit memory is the kind you can talk about. The kind that lets you say, "I remember doing this. I remember being there. I remember what happened." Implicit memory is different. It stores skills, reflexes, learned responses, and emotional calibrations that your body carries without needing conscious access to them. You do not need to remember learning to ride a bicycle to still know how to balance. The knowledge lives somewhere deeper than story. Dreams, according to the most current research, do not primarily target explicit memory. They are not trying to create stories you will carry forward into waking life. They are targeting something far older and far more essential: the implicit memory systems that govern how your body responds to the world. How quickly you read caution in a stranger's face. How automatically you shift your posture when something feels uncertain. How instinctively you know, in a charged social situation, who to trust and who to be careful around. These are not things you learned consciously. They were trained, quietly, in the dark, in ways you were never meant to remember. Think about what implicit memory actually stores. A musician who has practiced for years does not consciously recall each individual movement of their fingers when they play. The knowledge lives in the body. A martial artist does not think through a sequence of moves before responding. The response arrives before thought does. A person who has navigated complex social environments develops a kind of radar for warmth, for hesitation, for hidden tension. These are implicit skills. And the remarkable thing is that sleep, specifically dreaming sleep, appears to be one of the primary places where these skills are built, refined, and updated, night after night, in experiences you will never consciously remember. Athletes and musicians who are learning new skills show something fascinating when they sleep. When tested on a technique or sequence the morning after sleeping, they perform measurably better than they did the evening before, even without any additional conscious practice. This effect is specific to sleep. It does not happen at the same rate during equivalent waking rest. Something in sleep, something in dreaming, is doing work that waking practice alone cannot replicate. And the people experiencing these improvements cannot tell you what they were doing in their dreams, because they do not remember. The training happened entirely below the level of conscious recall. The origins of dreaming sleep reach back into a past almost impossible to imagine. Research on the Australian bearded dragon, a reptile, has found that these animals enter sleep states with both slow wave and REM-like patterns, suggesting that these states evolved in the common ancestor of reptiles, birds, and mammals, at least 300 million years ago. Some research, tracing sleep-like neural signatures in zebrafish, pushes that origin even further, perhaps 450 million years, to the first vertebrates in ancient oceans. Whatever the precise origin, the sleeping, dreaming brain is among the oldest preserved features of complex animal life on Earth. It has been with us, in some form, far longer than we had imagined. Every mammal that has been carefully studied shows signs of REM sleep. Cats, rats, horses, whales, elephants, platypus. They all pass through this same rhythm of dreaming-like brain activity during sleep. This universality is scientifically meaningful. When a feature appears consistently across species that diverged from a common ancestor hundreds of millions of years ago, it is not an accident. It has been selected for, maintained, and preserved because it provides something essential. The fact that dreaming appears in every mammal we have studied tells us that forgetting our dreams is probably not unique to humans either. It likely serves the same ancient function across the entire class. So here is where we begin to resolve the paradox. The brain uses dreams to run simulations, training the emotional and physical reflexes that help you survive and navigate social life. But it does not need you to remember the simulation to benefit from it. The implicit skills being trained do not require a conscious narrative to be stored. The story can disappear. The capability stays. At this point in our journey, the central question is coming into focus. Why does forgetting the dream protect you? Why is erasing the story not just harmless, but perhaps genuinely necessary? That is exactly where we are headed. The threat simulation theory, developed by neuroscientist Antti Revonsuo, proposes that dreaming evolved specifically as a kind of biological rehearsal space for challenging situations. In this view, the sleeping brain is not generating random imagery. It is running difficult scenarios, over and over, in various combinations, to prepare your nervous system for the kinds of circumstances your ancestors faced. This is why most dreams, when analyzed in large studies, lean toward tense or challenging content rather than peaceful or neutral experiences. The system is biased toward practicing what is hardest, because those are the scenarios where preparation matters most. When researchers analyze the emotional content of large collections of dream reports, a consistent pattern emerges. The emotional texture of dreams tends to lean toward challenge, tension, or difficulty rather than ease. Not because the dreaming brain is troubled, but because a nervous system that practices the harder things is one that is better prepared for whatever the waking world might bring. The unpleasant texture of many dreams is not a flaw in the system. It is the system working exactly as it was shaped to work, prioritizing the emotional training that carries the highest practical value. People who have experienced difficulty show a very specific pattern in their dreams. Recurring dreams often return to the emotional core of a challenging experience, sometimes with accuracy, sometimes with variations that shift the context or the outcome. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. The simulation system has encountered something it cannot fully process or resolve, and so it keeps returning to the scenario, trying different angles, looking for a response that settles. The recurring dream is not a punishment. It is the system doing its job with unusual persistence, because the situation it is trying to process was unusually complex. Researchers studying children in environments of high stress have found something that supports the simulation framework in a meaningful way. Children living in more challenging circumstances report dreams with content that mirrors the pressures of their waking lives. The brain is reading the environment, assessing what it needs to practice, and calibrating the simulation accordingly. The dreaming system is adaptive in real time, adjusting what it rehearses based on what the waking world actually requires. It is, in a quiet sense, always listening, always preparing. There are certain dream themes that appear across virtually every human culture ever studied. Falling, being pursued, arriving somewhere unprepared, finding yourself unable to move at the speed you need. These universal scenarios do not come from shared cultural stories. They come from shared evolutionary history, the sleeping brain of every human being, regardless of language, culture, or geography, runs some version of the same ancient scenarios. These are the core situations that the simulation system was originally shaped to rehearse. Circumstances that would have had direct survival consequences for your ancestors. Preserved in your dreaming mind long after the original context has changed. Studies that have systematically analyzed large collections of dream reports find that the content of dreams in contemporary hunter-gatherer communities shares significant themes with the dreams of urban dwellers in industrialized societies. Difficulties, social tensions, relationship challenges, and navigation appear across both groups. This cross-cultural stability suggests that the core architecture of the dreaming simulation system has not changed significantly in response to modern life. The situations we face today are different, but the system rehearsing responses to them is running on the same ancient design that once rehearsed responses to very different kinds of challenge. Here is something worth sitting quietly. In most of the difficult dreams, people report, the dreamer is on the receiving end of the challenge, facing a threat, not creating one. This asymmetry is not accidental. The evolutionary value of the simulation system is not in practicing how to be formidable. It is in practicing how to respond when things become difficult. The system trains awareness, calibrates alarm, and builds the capacity to recognize a changing situation early. Being the one who needs to respond in the dream is the whole point. The system is preparing your defensive reflexes, because those are the ones that matter most in a genuinely uncertain moment. During REM sleep, the amygdala, the brain structure most associated with processing emotional salience and responses to challenge, is more active than it is during most waking states. This is the emotional processing center of the brain, running at high intensity while you sleep. But here is the part worth noticing. The prefrontal cortex, which normally applies context, regulates intensity, and creates narrative coherence, is relatively quiet. The emotional experience of the dream is genuine and real feeling, but it is not being filtered through the rational, reality-testing mind. This creates the conditions for authentic emotional rehearsal, the kind that leaves real traces in how the body responds, without the cognitive dampening that would reduce its effectiveness. The intensity of emotions in dreams is not a byproduct of dreaming. The emotion is the workout. When your dreaming self feels something strongly, the amygdala is genuinely activating. The body is responding with real physiological changes, shifts in heart rate, in breathing, in muscle tone. The nervous system is practicing the full sequence of response, from recognition to mobilization. And when you wake up, even if you cannot remember what you were responding to or why, those practiced pathways are a little more calibrated than they were before you slept. The training leaves traces even when the memory does not. Now consider what would happen if the brain did not erase the story of the simulation. If you woke up with a vivid, detailed memory of having experienced something intense in a dream, a complete sensory experience, emotionally charged, stored in the same memory system as your actual experiences, how would you know it had not happened? Your memory of real events and your memory of the dream would be stored in the same neural real estate, tagged with the same emotional weight. Over time, The challenge of sorting real memories from simulated ones would accumulate into something genuinely disorienting. In a world where accurate shared perception of events determines trust and relationship, this confusion would carry real cost. There are rare windows into what happens when the system that separates dreaming from waking life becomes permeable. In narcolepsy, one of the defining features is the intrusion of sleep-related experiences into the waking state. Vivid imagery, sleep paralysis, and sometimes the continuation of dreamlike scenarios into moments of alertness. People with narcolepsy sometimes experience what is called dream-reality confusion, in which they cannot determine, in the moment of waking, whether what they just experienced was real. This is not a minor inconvenience. It can cause real distress, real misattribution of events, and real disruption to the relationships that depend on a stable, shared sense of what actually happened. Another window into what the brain's forgetting mechanism protects against comes from REM, sleep behavior disorder. In this condition, the normal muscle stillness that accompanies REM sleep is reduced or absent. People with this condition may move, speak aloud, or respond physically to what their dreaming mind perceives, responding to situations that exist only in the simulation, as if those situations were real. When they wake, the dream may or may not be clearly remembered, but the body has responded to it fully. This tells us something important about what the forgetting mechanism is doing. It is not simply clearing space after a dream. It is maintaining the fundamental integrity of your sense of what is real and what is simulation. The consequences of a blurred boundary between simulation and reality are not theoretical. They affect real people in real ways. The dreaming brain, when the normal protective separations are reduced, treats the simulated situation as an actual one and recruits the body accordingly. This tells us something important about what the forgetting mechanism is protecting. It is not simply organizing memory. It is maintaining the most essential orientation a mind can have, the knowledge of what actually happened, who the people in your life actually are, and what you can trust as real. Every morning when you wake up knowing these things clearly, something has worked exactly as it was designed to. Evolution is a patient and precise curator. It does not preserve mechanisms that carry high costs without high benefits. The fact that the brain has developed a multi-layered system for releasing dream memories, involving changes in brain chemistry, shifts in memory consolidation processes, and the timing of hormonal changes at waking, suggests that this forgetting is not incidental. It was shaped by selection, because creatures who could maintain a clear boundary between simulated experience and real experience made more accurate decisions, had more reliable relationships, and were more likely to survive. The clarity of your waking mind, the certainty that you know what actually happened, is an evolutionary achievement. And so the paradox begins to dissolve. Your brain does not forget your dreams because something goes wrong in the night. It forgets them because something goes exactly right. The simulation runs. The implicit skills are trained. The emotional reflexes are calibrated. And then, because storing the narrative would create more problems than it solves, the story is released. The capability stays. The confusion is prevented. You wake up a little more prepared for the world than you were the night before, with no memory of the training that made it so. At this point in our journey, we understand the paradox. Now we can begin to explore what the simulation itself actually looks like. Take a deep breath here and let it go slowly. Every cell in your body carries information that is older than human language, older than agriculture, older than fire. The sleeping brain you carry tonight is the same sleeping brain that kept your earliest ancestors alive in the dark. They slept and dreamed and forgot and woke and survived. You are here because that system worked. Feel the weight of that lineage settling through you now. The ancient machinery quietly doing what it has always done. You don't need to remember what it does. It remembers for you. Now we continue. The Network Exploration to Understand Possibilities model, developed by sleep researchers Matthew Walker and Robert Stickgold, offers a different and complementary lens on what dreaming accomplishes. In this framework, the dreaming brain is not simply replaying known responses. It is doing something more creative and more flexible. It is exploring the unexpected connections between ideas, memories, and emotional experiences. The links that are too subtle or too improbable to surface during the focused, directed thinking of waking life, dreaming. In this view, is the brain's way of searching the space of possibility, not just consolidating what is already known. During waking life, your thinking is constrained and goal-directed. You pursue particular lines of thought, dismiss apparent irrelevancies, and stay on task. This is useful, but it limits the range of associations your brain explores. During REM sleep, this constraint is lifted. The brain moves more freely between memories, sensations, and emotional states, following subtle associations rather than obvious ones, making connections that focused thought would never pursue. This is why dreams so often feel unusual or unexpected. They are the output of a mind deliberately exploring its own margins, finding relationships between things that conscious thinking would never allow to touch. This is also why dreams so frequently combine people you know with places you have never been, or mix the emotional texture of one relationship with the narrative content of another entirely. The dreaming brain is not malfunctioning when it produces these combinations. It is doing exactly what the model describes, moving through the network of your experiences, looking for useful, if improbable, connections. The unexpected quality of dreams is not a sign of disorder. It is the signature of a mind operating in its most exploratory mode, unconstrained by the need to be literal or consistent or immediately practical. Some fish and birds also show signs of sleep states that share qualities with mammalian REM. This observation pushes the origin of dreaming-like brain activity far beyond the mammals, suggesting that the roots of this ancient process extend even deeper into evolutionary history than previously thought. The implication is meaningful. If sleep states resembling REM appear in creatures whose evolutionary lineage diverged from ours hundreds of millions of years ago, then whatever dreaming is doing is not a recent adaptation specific to complex mammalian brains. It is something far more fundamental, a basic feature of how nervous systems process and organize experience during rest. At the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, researcher Matthew Wilson recorded the activity of individual neurons in the hippocampi of sleeping rats, the brain region central to memory and navigation. He found that during sleep, those neurons fired in sequences that closely mirrored the patterns recorded while the rats were awake and moving through a maze. During deeper, non-dreaming sleep phases, the brain compressed the experience dramatically. A journey that took 4 seconds to complete was replayed in just 1 or 2 tenths of a second. During dreaming sleep, those same sequences played back at something closer to real time, as if the sleeping brain were watching a full-length film of the day's experience rather than a brief highlight. The rats could not report any of it in the morning. They simply navigated the maze more fluently. What the rat maze experiments reveal is not just that the brain replays experience during sleep. It is that the replay appears to be organized, selective, and purposeful. The sequences that were replayed most consistently tended to be those most associated with reward or challenge. The sleeping brain was not randomly shuffling memories. It was prioritizing, extracting the most practically useful information from the day's experience and running it through the night's processing system. This is not passive storage. It is active, purposeful preparation. The body lying still while the mind continues its quiet work. Social simulation may be one of the most important and least discussed functions of dreaming. In large studies of dream content, social interactions are among the most common elements. Conversations, moments of tension, alliances, reconciliations, misunderstandings that need resolving. The dreaming brain rehearses the dynamics of human relationships with the same consistency with which it rehearses other kinds of challenge. This makes evolutionary sense. For a deeply social species like ours, the ability to read other people accurately, to sense hesitation, to recognize warmth, to navigate a tense exchange, has always been as important to survival as the ability to respond to physical challenge. Studies that have systematically analyzed large collections of dream reports find that a significant proportion contains social conflict or difficulty between the dreamer and another person. This prevalence of social challenge in dreams is not a reflection of a troubled mind. It appears to be a feature of the system. The brain rehearsing the most complex and highest stakes forms of social interaction. The ones where a misjudgment in waking life carries the highest cost. The dreaming mind treats difficult social situations as seriously as any other form of challenge, as scenarios worth preparing for. In the majority of difficult dream scenarios, the dreamer is on the receiving end of the challenge rather than creating it. This parallels what we see with physical simulation. The system is calibrating your awareness and response capacity, not your capacity for aggression. It is training you to recognize difficulty directed at you, to feel the appropriate alertness, and to mobilize a considered response. The pattern is consistent across cultures and age groups. It is a signature of the system's deepest priority. Keeping you oriented and ready takes precedence over making you formidable. The predictive homeostasis framework, developed by sleep researcher Robert Bodices and colleagues, offers a broader view of what the dreaming brain is doing in the second half of the night. In this model, dreaming is not just a reactive system that processes what has already happened. It is a prospective system that prepares for what is coming. The dreaming mind, particularly in the later hours of sleep, engages in a kind of unconstrained future simulation, exploring possible upcoming situations, emotional scenarios, and social circumstances in a free-flowing way. You are not just processing the past. You are, in some sense, preparing for the future. Here is something that many people notice, but rarely examine closely. Dreams about being unprepared for an important test or presentation continue to occur in people who have been out of school or a previous role for years, sometimes decades. The content of the dream is no longer literally relevant to their lives, but the emotional core of it, the experience of being evaluated under pressure, of facing high stakes without adequate preparation, remains a live area of practice in some part of their nervous system. The simulation system runs these scenarios not because they are literally probable, but because the emotional category they represent is still worth rehearsing. When you wake in the morning, your body releases a gradual rise in cortisol, the hormone most associated with alertness and the transition from rest to action. This morning, cortisol shift is not simply a signal to become active. Research suggests it also plays a role in moving the brain away from the diffuse, exploratory processing of sleep and toward the focused, goal-directed thinking of waking life. One of the consequences of this shift appears to be the rapid dissolving of dream memories. The same hormonal change that prepares you to face the day also appears to facilitate the release of the night's simulations. The role of cortisol in dream forgetting was illuminated in a study in which researchers pharmacologically suppressed the morning cortisol rise. Participants whose cortisol was suppressed showed significantly better recall of memories that had been reactivated during sleep compared to those who experienced a normal cortisol pattern. This provides a rare glimpse into the biological machinery of dream amnesia. The morning cortisol shift is not incidental. It appears to be part of the mechanism by which the brain completes the night's simulation and prepares the memory system for a new day of real experience. The predictive homeostasis model offers a quietly beautiful way of framing dream forgetting. In this view, you do not forget dreams because the brain fails to consolidate them. You forget them because consolidating them would interfere with the brain's next task, anticipating and preparing for the day ahead. The moment of waking is associated with a powerful shift toward forward-looking, goal-oriented awareness. The dreams, which were generated for the night's processing, are released precisely because the morning mind needs its full resources for a different kind of thinking. You release the past night to make space for the coming day. And so we arrive at a different way of understanding the moment you wake up and realize you cannot remember what you dreamed. The simulation has run. The implicit learning has been deposited where it belongs. The response patterns have been calibrated. The social reflexes refined. The emotional patterns gently adjusted. The story, the vivid narrative that would only create confusion if you carried it into your waking sense of reality, has been released. The training program has quietly closed. The door opens onto morning. You step through, not knowing what happened behind you. And that, it turns out, is exactly as it was designed to be. You're still here with me, still breathing slowly, still drifting through hundreds of millions of years of sleeping minds. Take one gentle breath now. Notice how the body feels a little heavier than when we began. That is not tiredness. That is something older. The ancient machinery recognizing that the simulation can begin. We are traveling through the dreaming brain together tonight. Slowly, without any need to arrive. Let's continue. By now you may recognize this distinction between the kind of memory you can speak aloud and the kind that lives in the body without needing a story. Explicit memory has narrative structure, a sense of when, where, and what happened. Implicit memory has none of these qualities. It is stored in practiced patterns of response that operate below the level of conscious awareness. You do not need to think about how to walk, how to catch a falling object, how to read the emotional tone of a room. These capacities live in implicit memory, and they function perfectly without any conscious narrative to support them. And this, it turns out, is precisely where dreaming does most of its essential work. If you woke up every morning with a clear, vivid, narrative memory of your dreams, stored with the same detail and accessibility as your memories of real waking events, your explicit memory system would face a meaningful challenge. It would contain experiences that felt real, were emotionally rich, and were tagged with the same markers as genuine events, but which had never actually happened. The challenge of sorting real memories from dream memories would grow with each night of remembered dreaming. Over weeks and months, the potential for confusion between what you actually experienced and what you only simulated would accumulate into something genuinely disorienting. Imagine waking each morning carrying not just yesterday's memories, but last night's encounters, its conflicts, its unexpected meetings, its conversations with people you have never met in waking life, stored with the same clarity as real experience, tagged with the same emotional weight. Over time, which version of events would you trust? The implicit skills cultivated during dreaming do not carry this risk. Your improved ability to read a tense situation does not need a label saying where it came from. Your slightly faster awareness does not require a conscious memory of the scenario that shaped it. These gains are integrated into your functioning without passing through narrative memory. They become part of who you are without needing to be part of what you remember. The 2024 paper by Zhao, Schoch, Vali, and Dresler at Radboud University Medical Center synthesizes years of research on dreaming and memory into a unified framework that dissolves what the researchers called an apparent paradox. Dreams train implicit, non-declarative skills. The amnesia that follows dreaming targets explicit, declarative memory, the kind that could cause confusion between simulation and reality. The two processes are separable precisely because they involve different memory systems. You can lose the story completely while retaining every practical benefit the story's events generated. The forgetting is precise. It removes exactly what could cause harm and leaves exactly what provides benefit. This framework helps explain a phenomenon that coaches and teachers of physical skills have observed for generations. When someone learns a new movement pattern, a particular technique in a sport, a sequence of positions on an instrument, a subtle adjustment in timing or posture, sleeping on it produces improvements that additional practice during the same day does not match. The person has no memory of practicing it in their dreams, but the sleeping brain has done something to consolidate and refine the pattern, and the body is more capable the next morning. The implicit memory has been updated. The story of how it happened has been released. Language learning offers another window into this process. People who study a new language and then sleep show significantly better consolidation of vocabulary and grammatical patterns than those who remain awake during the same interval. This effect has been documented across multiple studies with different languages and different learning approaches. The sleeping brain is not simply storing the words more efficiently. It appears to be integrating them into the implicit pattern recognition systems that underlie fluent use. The systems that eventually allow a speaker to understand and produce language without consciously retrieving individual items from memory. The fluency was built in the dark. Musicians provide some of the most compelling natural evidence for implicit memory consolidation during sleep. String players who have spent a session working on a difficult passage often find they can play it more cleanly the following morning without any intervening practice. The fingers know something the conscious mind was not aware of learning. This is the sleeping brain integrating the motor patterns, adjusting the micro-timing, smoothing the transitions between movements in ways that waking practice, focused at the conscious level, could not achieve with the same efficiency. The practice happened. The memory of practicing did not. The evolutionary logic of this arrangement is worth sitting with. A simulation system that trains survival-relevant skills while leaving no conscious memory of itself is, in a sense, a perfectly quiet operator. It prepares you for situations you have not yet faced. It calibrates your responses to challenge without requiring you to consciously experience those challenges in waking life. It updates your social and emotional awareness without burdening your explicit memory with experiences that might be mistaken for real events. It is invisible, efficient, and precisely shaped for the kind of silent preparation that keeps a creature alive and oriented in a complex world. The solution that evolution arrived at: release the narrative, preserve the capability, is elegant precisely because it avoids the central challenge of the entire simulation project. The challenge is not that the simulations are too vivid or too emotionally intense. The challenge is that a brain capable of generating experiences that feel completely real might end up unable to distinguish between what it simulated and what actually happened. By selectively targeting the explicit, narrative memory of the dream, while leaving the implicit learning intact, the system captures all the benefit of the simulation while eliminating the primary cost. It is a remarkably precise solution. Halfway through our journey tonight, the answer to our central question is taking shape. Why does your brain forget your dreams? Because the part worth keeping was never the story. The story was the wrapper. Inside, it was something far more valuable. A slight recalibration of your reflexes. A small adjustment in your emotional responses. A subtle update to the implicit map you carry of how the world works and how to move through it. The story dissolves in the morning light. The update persists. Quietly. In the body. In the nerves. In the patterns of response that will shape your choices tomorrow without your ever knowing where they came from. Rest here for a moment. You exist in two streams of time simultaneously. The waking stream, where you remember, plan, and narrate your life. And the sleeping stream, where something older than memory runs its quiet training program, updates its ancient files, and prepares you for a world you have not yet entered. Both streams are you. Both are necessary. The part of you that forgets is not failing. It is completing the exchange. Let your breathing slow a little more now, and we drift on together. Newborn humans spend roughly 50% of their total sleep time in REM, more than at any other point in their lives. This proportion gradually decreases through childhood and continues to decline across the lifespan. The extraordinary amount of REM sleep in infancy is not accidental. The neonatal brain is developing at a remarkable rate, forming connections, establishing basic response patterns, building the foundational architecture of a mind that will eventually navigate an enormously complex social world. The dreaming brain is busy from the very beginning, doing its essential work before the infant has any capacity to remember or report it. The developmental pattern of REM sleep, abundant at birth, gradually decreasing with age, maps well onto the trajectory of implicit skill development. Infants are learning at the deepest level how to coordinate movement, how to read emotional signals in faces, how to anticipate and respond to the behavior of other people. These are the foundational implicit skills that everything else is built upon. The sleeping brain, in its long nightly cycles of activity, appears to be doing a significant share of this foundational work during the period when the brain is most responsive and most hungry for the kind of pattern building that sleep provides. Watching an infant during active sleep is quietly extraordinary. The face moves. Expressions flicker across features too young to have learned them from experience. Something that resembles effort. Something that might be concentration. Something that looks almost like response. The eyes move beneath closed lids. Small twitches ripple through the body. Whatever is happening in that sleeping brain is not stillness. It is purposeful, organized activity that we cannot access through the infant's report. Because the infant has no language yet to offer one, the work is real. The record of it is not kept. Children between the ages of 2 and 5 have dreams that are notably different from those of older children and adults. When they do report dreams, which requires waking them gently from sleep and asking immediately, the content is typically simple and still. An image of an animal, a familiar object or person, something to eat. There is no plot, no narrative arc, no dreamer as an active participant. This is not because young children dream less deeply. It is because the narrative capacity of dreaming requires a more developed prefrontal cortex than a 3-year-old possesses. The simulation runs. The storytelling apparatus has not yet arrived to wrap around it. The emergence of narrative dreaming. Dreams with sequences. Characters who move and speak. The dreamer as an active presence within the experience. Tracks closely with the development of the prefrontal cortex. This development accelerates around age 7 or 8 and continues into early adulthood. The implication is meaningful. The narrative that dreams produce is a relatively late addition to the system, something the developing brain adds as its architecture matures. The simulation came first. The story is what gets added on top of it, and what gets released in the morning. The foundation is ancient. The wrapper is newer. This developmental sequence tells us something important. If the simulation were primarily about creating narrative memories, we would expect the richest dreaming to correlate with the richest narrative capacity. But the opposite appears to be true. Infants and young children, who cannot yet construct dream narratives, show the highest levels of REM activity. The system is most active precisely when narrative memory capacity is lowest. This strongly suggests that narrative is secondary to the simulation itself. The training that dreaming provides does not require, and may not even depend on, the dreamer's ability to tell the story afterward. Dolphins and some species of porpoise have evolved a remarkable adaptation to the challenge of sleeping in the water. They rest with one brain hemisphere at a time, one side in deeper sleep, while the other remains alert enough to maintain basic movement and environmental awareness. This is called unihemispheric sleep, and it allows these animals to rest without becoming entirely vulnerable. Whether dolphins experience something like dreaming in this divided state remains an open question. But the existence of the adaptation tells us that sleep is important enough for these animals to have evolved an extraordinarily complex workaround to preserve it even in the most challenging circumstances. Migratory birds face a similar challenge. During long flights, some species appear to engage in periods of reduced hemisphere sleep while continuing to navigate. Studies tracking brain activity in birds in flight suggest that brief periods of partial sleep occur during the journey. The sleeping portion of the brain continues its work, while the other half manages the demands of flight and direction. This extraordinary capacity reinforces the point made by all mammalian sleep research. Rest, and whatever happens during it are not optional. They are important enough that evolution has developed elaborate strategies to preserve them under the most demanding circumstances. The octopus has become one of the most fascinating subjects in sleep research. A creature whose evolutionary lineage diverged from ours roughly 550 million years ago has been observed to undergo something that looks remarkably like REM sleep. A study published in the journal Nature in 2023, conducted at the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology, documented that during certain sleep phases, the octopus's skin ripples with rapid, dynamic color changes, the same patterns it uses for camouflage and communication while awake. The brain activity during these phases closely resembles neural patterns seen during wakefulness, just as REM sleep brain activity resembles waking in mammals. The researchers described this as a distinct active sleep stage and suggested that the octopus may experience something analogous to dreaming. The octopus observation matters not just as a curiosity, but as a signal. If something functionally similar to REM sleep appears in cephalopods, creatures whose lineage diverged from vertebrates hundreds of millions of years before backbones, warm blood, or mammalian brains existed, yet who arrived through completely independent paths at something resembling our own dreaming sleep, then whatever this ancient rhythm is doing must serve a purpose so fundamental that multiple evolutionary lineages arrived at something like it independently. This kind of convergent evolution, appearing in creatures as different as birds, mammals, and octopuses, is one of the strongest signals in biology that a feature is genuinely important. The Achua people of the Ecuadorian and Peruvian Amazon have one of the most distinctively dream-centered cultures documented by anthropologists. Each morning, before anything else happens, family members gather in the quiet before dawn to share what came to them in the night. This sharing is not casual conversation. It is a structured and serious practice of communal reflection, in which the content of dreams is used to guide decisions about daily life, relationships, and the well-being of the community. In Achua culture, the dreaming mind has access to something the waking mind cannot directly perceive. Dreams are not set aside. They are listened to. The Iroquois Confederacy, the alliance of indigenous nations that once stretched across much of northeastern North America, had a sophisticated understanding of dreams that predates modern psychology by centuries. In this tradition, dreams were understood as expressions of what the soul most deeply needed, desires that the waking self might not be aware of or might be unable to acknowledge directly. Communities had established practices for attending to what dreams revealed, and failing to honor the needs expressed in dreaming was understood to carry real consequences for individual and collective well-being. The recognition that something important happens in sleep, below the level of waking awareness, is not a modern discovery. The Aboriginal Australian concept of the dreaming, sometimes called dreamtime, describes the foundational creative period in which ancestral beings shaped the land, established the patterns of life, and encoded the principles by which the present world operates. It is not experienced only during sleep. It is accessible through ceremony, story, and relationship with particular places. But its connection to dreaming as we understand it is real. Both involve access to a layer of experience that operates below or beyond ordinary waking consciousness. The specific frameworks differ. The underlying recognition is the same. What is quietly remarkable when you move across very different cultural frameworks for understanding dreams, is the consistency of one core intuition. No human culture ever studied has concluded that dreams are simply meaningless noise to be dismissed. The interpretive frameworks vary enormously. Dreams as guidance, as expressions of the soul, as communications from something beyond the individual, as windows into what the community needs to know. But the underlying conviction is consistent. Something meaningful is happening during dreaming. Even when, perhaps especially when, we cannot remember it clearly or translate it fully into waking terms. Sigmund Freud built much of his early psychology on the foundation of dream interpretation. He had no knowledge of REM sleep, no access to neuroimaging, no understanding of the amygdala or implicit memory systems. And yet his central intuition, that dreams provide access to mental processes not directly available to waking consciousness, has been validated in a different form by modern neuroscience. He was mistaken about many of the specifics. He was right that the dreaming mind is doing something that the waking, rational, narrative mind cannot fully see or access. The form of his understanding was imperfect. The core of it was not. Carl Jung proposed that the dreaming mind connects individual consciousness to something shared, a collective dimension of human experience, a layer of symbolic imagery and recurring pattern that transcends individual biography. Modern neuroscience does not confirm the specific metaphysical claims he made, but the cross-cultural consistency of dream themes, the universal appearance of certain images, certain emotional scenarios, certain patterns across completely unrelated cultures, is real. And it remains something that purely individualistic theories of dreaming have to account for. The science has changed. The underlying observation that prompted his thinking has not. Patients in the advanced stages of Alzheimer's disease experience profound losses of explicit memory. They may no longer recognize the faces of people they love. They may lose the ability to construct coherent sentences or recall events from their own lives. But they continue to dream. The dreaming system, residing in evolutionarily older brain structures that the disease reaches later, remains functional long after the hippocampal and cortical systems that support explicit memory have been severely affected. Dreaming outlasts the capacity to remember. This separation reveals that dreaming and explicit memory are not the same process, and that dreaming's roots run deeper than conscious recall. People who have been blind since birth experience dreams that are organized entirely around non-visual senses. Sound, touch, spatial awareness, movement, smell. Their dreams are vivid and emotionally rich. The dreaming simulation system does not require vision to function. It recruits whatever sensory channels are available and builds its simulations from them. This tells us that dreaming is not fundamentally a visual phenomenon. It is a multimodal simulation process that uses vision when available and organizes itself differently when vision is not. The function is primary. The modality adjusts to what the dreamer actually has. People who are deaf from birth use sign language in their dreams. The mental representation of language, the internal sense of meaning, communication, and linguistic structure, is organized around the sensory and motor systems the person actually uses, not around a hypothetical default. This is consistent with what we see in those who are blind. The dreaming brain works with what it has, organizing the simulation around the actual perceptual world of the individual dreamer. The content is specific to the person's life and experience. The underlying process, the simulation itself, appears to be universal. Recurring dreams occupy a quiet and particular place in the landscape of dreaming. When a similar scenario appears across many nights, across months or even years, it is often a signal that the simulation system has encountered something it has not yet fully settled. The scenario keeps returning because the system keeps trying. It adjusts the context, shifts the setting, but returns to the same emotional core. The recurring dream is not evidence of something wrong. It is evidence of the system's persistence, its commitment to working through what it has not yet resolved. Image rehearsal therapy, developed by researcher Barry Krakow, offers a revealing window into the relationship between conscious intention and the dreaming simulation system. In this approach, people experiencing recurring difficult dreams are guided to recall the content, consciously revise the ending or key elements while awake, and then mentally practice the revised version before sleep. The results, across multiple clinical studies, show meaningful reductions in the frequency and intensity of difficult dreams. The waking mind, given the right tools, can send a kind of gentle instruction to the sleeping simulation system. The boundary between conscious and unconscious processing is permeable in both directions. Lucid dreaming, the experience of becoming aware, within a dream, that you are dreaming, represents one of the most fascinating intersections between conscious and unconscious processing in all of sleep science. When a dreamer becomes lucid, the prefrontal cortex partially reactivates while the dream continues. The dreamer gains the capacity for self-reflection and, sometimes, deliberate participation in the dream's direction. Studies using eye movement signals to communicate between lucid dreamers and researchers have demonstrated that genuine, real-time interaction between the sleeping brain and the outside world is possible during lucid dreams. The dreaming mind, under the right conditions, can know itself. The existence of lucid dreaming tells us something about the nature of ordinary dream forgetting. Lucid dreams are significantly more likely to be remembered upon waking than non-lucid ones. When the prefrontal cortex is active during the dream, providing self-awareness and narrative coherence, the conditions for explicit memory formation are partially restored, and the dream becomes more accessible to conscious recall. This is consistent with the idea that ordinary dream forgetting is related to the deliberate quieting of prefrontal activity during non-lucid REM sleep. When the cortex is stilled, the story dissolves. When it reactivates, the story can sometimes be caught. Infants, birds mid-flight, people with narcolepsy, lucid dreamers, musicians who improve overnight, athletes who learn while they sleep, octopuses whose skin ripples with color in the dark. All of these, from their very different vantage points, are showing us different facets of the same ancient, intricate, carefully shaped system, a system that simulates, trains, and releases. A system that gives you capabilities you did not have yesterday without letting you remember how you acquired them. A system that has been running, in some form, for longer than most of what we think of as history. From the sleep to the elder sharing visions in the quiet before dawn, to the infant whose flickering face suggests invisible worlds, to the octopus whose skin remembers something its brain is reviewing in the night. Dreaming is the oldest language that living systems use to speak to themselves. And the forgetting is not the failure of that conversation. It is the completion of it. The message has been received. The body has understood. The story, having done its work, releases itself back into the silence from which it came. You may be feeling sleepy now. That is perfectly welcome. Breathe slowly and feel this. Every night, the training runs. Every morning, the story releases. Train and release. Train and release. This is not failure. This is the rhythm of hundreds of millions of years. Like breathing itself. Receive. Release. Simulate. Dissolve. You are not losing anything in the forgetting. You are completing the cycle. Let your body feel heavier now. Let the ancient rhythm carry you. We are moving into the final part of our journey. Let whatever remains of the day dissolve now. And we continue. If your brain kept every dream as clearly and in as much detail as a real experience, you would wake each morning carrying many alternative lives. You would have navigated situations you never navigated, known people you had never met, felt things that had not happened. Over weeks, the boundary between what you actually did and what you only simulated would grow thin. The forgetting is the boundary. It is redrawn each morning, quietly, cleanly, so that you can step into your real life knowing which one is real. The person you are when you open your eyes is the person your waking life has made, not the person your dreams made. The dreams have contributed to who you are, quietly, invisibly, through the implicit changes they leave behind. But your sense of your own history, your relationships, your choices, these belong to the waking self. The forgetting protects that ownership. You wake into your actual life, not into a composite of your actual life and 100 simulations of it. Knowing who you are when you wake up sounds simple, but it is one of the most sophisticated feats of information management the brain performs each day. The dreaming mind has been generating experiences of comparable richness and emotional texture to waking experience. The fact that you can step out of that world and immediately into this one, with a clear sense of which is real, is a quiet achievement of neural design, made possible, in part, by the precise releasing of what you just experienced. The line between imagination and memory, between simulation and experience, is one of the most important distinctions a mind can maintain. Everything that makes trust possible depends on this distinction holding. The mechanism that releases dream narratives is one of the systems that keeps this distinction intact. It is not a small thing. It is, in a sense, the guardian of your ability to share a world with other people, to have a common sense of what actually happened and what was only imagined. When you woke up this morning, you may have had a brief sense of something, a texture, an emotion, a faint residue of a dream already dissolving. That faint residue is what remains after the system has completed its work. Not the story, not the characters or the images or the events, just the emotional echo. And even that fades. Like warmth left in a seat after someone has risen. The story is gone. What it shaped in you persists. Your body knows things your mind has released. The subtle shift in awareness that comes when something feels uncertain. The ease that arrives in situations your nervous system has practiced, even in simulated form. The calibration of your responses to the recurring patterns of social life. These are the legacies of forgotten dreams. Invisible, integrated, specific. They guide you without announcing themselves. They shape you without your knowing you are being shaped. Implicit memory does not announce itself. It does not say, "I am the product of last Thursday's dream." It simply operates below language, below narrative, below the layer of conscious experience where you recognize things as memories at all. This silence is part of what makes it effective. A preparation system that had to be consciously recalled before it could function would be far too slow. The implicit system is already responding before the conscious mind has finished forming the question. Every time you sense something has shifted in a room before anyone has said a word, something learned in forgotten dreams may be part of what you're drawing on. Every time you find yourself responding to a situation with a precision that your conscious understanding does not fully account for, the invisible work of forgotten nights may have contributed. You are the sum of countless sessions you will never remember. The knowledge lives in you without a label. It simply is. No dream is truly gone without remainder. The narrative dissolves. The characters fade. The images release. But the implicit patterns they practiced, the emotional calibrations they adjusted, the awareness they refined, these remain, integrated into the fabric of how you move through the world. The dream does not leave a scar. It leaves a capacity. The difference between those two things is the difference between something that happened to you and something that prepared you. The story disappears. What it built stays. This may be the most elegant thing about the entire system, that it gives you everything without requiring you to carry the weight of how the giving happened. The training dissolves so that only the more prepared self remains. You are not burdened by the work. You simply receive the result of it each morning, in the body, and the awareness that carries you forward into the day. Hundreds of millions of years of sleeping minds. Your earliest mammalian ancestors closed their eyes each night and let their brains run the ancient program. They dreamed, in some form. They released, in some form. And they woke up a little more prepared than they had been. And they survived. And their descendants survived. And eventually, across spans of time almost impossible to hold in mind, you appeared. You are the heir of every forgotten dream that ever shaped a sleeping mind into a slightly more capable waking one. Every night of simulation that left no narrative behind. Every morning when a creature woke into its life without knowing what the night had done for it. This inheritance is not stored in any archive you can access. It lives in your awareness, your reflexes, your capacity to navigate the world that surrounds you. Tonight, while you sleep, the chain continues. Your brain will take on the work that evolution has trusted it with for a very long time. It will simulate, prepare, adjust. And when the work is done, it will release the files. The story will dissolve. You will be returned to yourself, quiet and ready for what the day requires. You don't need to know what it did. You only need to let it do it. And you already know how. You have been doing it your whole life. When morning comes, and the last threads of the dream dissolve before you can catch them, that is not loss. That is completion. The program has run. The implicit updates have been deposited. The simulation is closed. The story has done its work. It no longer needs to exist. And so, gently, completely, it lets go. And you open your eyes into a morning that feels, without your knowing why, a little more navigable than the one before, a little more familiar in its challenges, you do not know what the night prepared you for. You do not know what the simulation practiced, what situation it ran through in the dark. You only know that you are here, and you are ready. Perhaps the most quietly generous thing the sleeping brain does is this. It does all of its essential work and then asks for nothing in return. No gratitude, no acknowledgement, no memory. It prepares you in silence, protects you from the confusion its preparation might cause, and releases you into each morning without claiming credit for what it has done. It serves you without requiring you to know it is serving you. The blank feeling of a morning when you cannot remember any dreams is not emptiness. It is the feeling of a completed exchange, one that happened entirely without your conscious participation. The night has given you something. The nature of the gift is that you cannot see the receipt. You cannot trace the line from the dream to the capability, from the simulation to the skill, from the forgotten story to the more prepared person who woke from it. The gift is real. It is simply quiet. You are this moment, the product of dreams you will never remember, the way you read a room, the particular quality of your awareness when something shifts, the social intelligence that tells you when to speak and when to wait. These are not simply things you were born with, or things you learned consciously. They were shaped, night after night, in the dark, in simulations that no longer exist anywhere except in what they made you. Dreams do not give you memories. They give you readiness. This is the shift in understanding that the science of dream forgetting has made possible. We used to think that forgetting dreams was a gap in the archive, something that happened because the recording system was not running properly. Now we understand that the forgetting is the design. The archive was never the point. The readiness was always the point. And readiness does not need to be remembered to be real. And so we arrive at the answer to the question we began with. Why does your brain forget your dreams? Because the part worth keeping was never the story. Your brain does not forget your dreams. It releases you from them, so that everything that mattered in the simulation can remain in silence, in the body, in the awareness and reflexes that will shape how you move through tomorrow. The forgetting is not absence, it is arrival. The dream has brought you to yourself, and then, with quiet precision, let go. Human beings may be the only creatures on Earth who lie awake, wondering why they cannot remember their dreams. Every other species that dreams, as far as we know, simply dreams, without asking what the dreaming means or wondering about what was released in the forgetting. The question itself, why do I forget, is a signature of the kind of self-reflective awareness that makes humans unusual. We are the species that dreams, and then wonders about the dreaming. And even that wondering is part of what the dreaming mind was quietly building. The fact that you can ask the question at all, why do I forget my dreams, is its own kind of answer. The self-awareness, the curiosity, the ability to hold a question in mind and follow it through. These are implicit achievements. They were shaped, among other places, in the training ground of forgotten nights. You are using the product of the process to ask about the process. This is one of the quieter and more beautiful loops in human experience. After all the neuroscience, after all the evolutionary biology, after all the cross-cultural evidence and the sleeping rats and the flickering octopuses and the pre-dawn circles of people sharing what the night brought them, something about the dreaming mind remains genuinely open. We understand many of the mechanisms. We have good frameworks for many of the functions. But the full experience of dreaming, what it is actually like from the inside. What the forgetting means from within remains, for now, beyond what science can fully describe. And that is all right. What we do not yet fully understand is simply an invitation to keep looking. Every night, your brain creates worlds. It builds them with detail and emotional texture that rivals anything waking life offers. It runs these worlds for hours, in the dark, while you lie still. And then, as morning approaches, it releases them, not carelessly, not accidentally, but precisely, keeping what serves you, releasing what would confuse you. The worlds dissolve, you rise, and you carry forward, invisibly, everything the night prepared without telling you. A forgotten dream is not something lost. It is something completed. The simulation has run. The implicit learning has been deposited. The story has served its purpose and released itself. And you, on the other side of it, are not the same person who closed their eyes last night, though you cannot trace the difference. And the dream that made it will never be recalled. This is the gift your sleeping brain gives you every night. In silence, without asking for acknowledgement. You wake, and the night's work is already living in you, already shaping the way you move through the world, already part of you, in the only way that ever truly mattered, not as memory, but as self. And so our quiet journey through the dreaming mind comes gently to its close. We have traveled from the paradox of a brain that releases what it creates, to the ancient survival simulations running beneath the surface of every night's sleep, discovering along the way that forgetting is not the failure of dreaming, it is its completion. From the sleeping rat replaying its path in the dark, to the infant whose flickering face suggests invisible worlds, to the octopus whose skin remembers something its brain is reviewing in the night, to the elder sharing visions in the quiet before dawn. We have glimpsed how dreaming may be the oldest language that life uses to prepare itself for the challenges of living. The story disappears. What it builds remains. The dreaming mind reminds us that not all growth is visible, and not all preparation is conscious. Much of what shapes us happens in silence, below the threshold of memory, in the hours when we have released our hold on the day. By lying still each night and allowing the ancient machinery to run, we participate in something that extends far beyond our individual lives. A chain of sleeping, dreaming, releasing minds that stretches back further than we can fully imagine. We are each, in our own way, a continuation of that chain. In these final minutes, take the deepest breath you can, as deep as it wants to go. Think about continuity. Every mammal that has ever lived has passed through this same quiet threshold. The boundary between waking and dreaming, between experience and simulation, between the self that remembers and the self that is quietly being prepared. Think about the chain of sleeping minds, each one releasing what it created, each one contributing to a lineage of readiness that eventually reached you. You are not separate from that continuity. Let your entire being begin to dissolve now, into the softness beneath you, into the quiet of the room, into the ancient rhythm of a brain preparing to do its invisible work. You don't need to help. You only need to let go. And the letting go is already happening. If this gentle journey through the dreaming mind helped you relax or drift towards sleep tonight, perhaps pass it softly to someone else who lies awake, asking quiet questions in the dark. A gentle like or share could help another restless mind find this peaceful space. One quiet tap, one sleepy soul at a time. But there is nothing you need to do now. Nothing at all. You have traveled far tonight. Through 100 facts about the sleeping mind. Through hundreds of millions of years of dreaming creatures. Through the strange and elegant design of a brain that prepares you in secret and protects you with releasing. You can allow all of it to dissolve now, like the dreams themselves, leaving only the quiet calm behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body grow heavier, as if warmly, gently held. If sleep comes, let it carry you, smoothly, completely, into the place where the ancient work will begin again, in silence, on your behalf. If your eyes are still open, the next video is waiting, ready to continue the journey. But if they are closed, stay there. Stay in that soft darkness. It knows what to do with you. Tomorrow, the day will come with its own requirements. But tonight belongs to stillness. Rest well, sleepy soul, and remember, you are right now, exactly where the dreaming mind has been preparing you to be. Safe, quiet, ready to be made. Once more, into someone slightly more prepared for the life that waits for you on the other side of sleep. Good night.